Man, I wish I wouldn't get hit with copyright just for playing a song with the word Soul Sisters in it, but I really want to use that for the beginning of this video. So, Dragonstorm spoilers are hitting us hard, and there is one thing that I am incredibly excited about, and that is the precons. Pretty much every single time Wizards of the Coast gives us any precons, they are usually very, very well made and worth more money than what you would have spent buying the individual cards, which is fantastic. But this does leave me with a bit of a problem. Yes, I'm going to be doing an upgrade video for these decks when they come out, but until then, I'm stuck here going, I'd really like to build a $15 deck around a lot of the dragons I've seen. This, of course, comes with a problem. Does this mean that I'm going to have the redundancy of, like, 4 videos all catering to the exact same commander player in my channel? Yeah, probably. Do I care about that? Yeah, probably. But I'd rather just go ahead and make this video now about Betor Ancestor's Voice, you know, before I think I shouldn't do it in the first place. So, just so you guys know, I have spent the last, 2 hours trying to retake this part of the video. I apologize for that. This is due to a couple of problems. One, I completely misread Betor Ancestor's Voice when I first built this deck. Now, this Abzan and friggin' 2 Dragon has a wonderful ability. Flying, lifelink, it can distribute 1/1 counters based on the life you've gained, and it can revive creatures based on the life you've lost, which is a fantastic ability, and it's very, very flavorful for what Abzan is trying to do and be as a wedge in Magic the Gathering on Tarkir. However, when I read the effect, I thought it was like Celestine or Rudolph Duskbringer, 2 commanders that I am very familiar with that both have the ability to revive creatures based on the life you've gained in any given turn. Now, this is my mistake, but this also meant that I needed to get a bunch of things about this commander wrong in the deck building process so that I could get to the point where I could actually build this thing in a way that worked. So I'm going to introduce you all to Tivosh the Gloom Summoner, who is not in this deck, but I need to show him to you so that you don't make the same mistake that I did. Now, Betor revives creatures based on the life you've lost during a given turn, and it's a trigger that happens at your end step. Tivosh has a trigger that happens at your end step as well, where if you've gained any life, you can pay that much life and make a giant demon creature when you do that ability. Now, I was under the assumption, when I was trying to build this deck the second time, after I realized my mistakes from the first time that I failed to build this thing, I thought that because Betor has 2 separate abilities, well, 2 abilities, one right after the other, that there would be a way to layer the triggers such that Betor would see Tivosh's life loss and a bunch of other end-step life loss effects that I had included. However, the way Betor works, no matter how far down that paragraph you go, he still selects his targets for revival as you put his ability on the stack, meaning there is never a point in time where you can modify your life that you've gained or lost before these abilities resolve in order to get any effect from them. So, Betor will only ever track the life you've lost and the life you've gained up until right before the beginning of your end step. Now that I've got that mistake out of the way, let's hope that I've built this thing right. So, our goal is going to be to build a deck that will be able to gain enough life so that we can pay that life as a resource for various effects going forward. One of the best archetypes for doing this is the Soul Sister archetype. For those who are not aware, Soul Sisters are cards that gain you life whenever other creatures enter the battlefield. And usually there are much more powerful versions of these, but we are running a budget deck. And yes, the deck is $17 instead of the usual $15, because to get this deck online and working, I had to add a little bit of upfront cost into the deck. I apologize, the deck is a little more expensive than I normally would produce here on the channel, outside of like different styles of decks. This is as expensive as I've made a quote $15 deck, in that it's just $17. It's not $15 anymore. Anyway, Impassioned Orator says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. This effect is shared across Lunarch Veteran, Core Celebrant, Social Climber, Life Creed Duo, Dazzling Angel, Distinguished Conjurer, Prosperous Innkeeper, and Elos Il Core. Each of these cards have a secondary ability, well, some of them do, that are helpful as well. If any of our creatures die, we can burn all of our opponents with Elos Il Core. Distinguished Conjurer can blink creatures on our board, and the Prosperous Innkeeper ramps us when it comes online as well. Speaking of ramp, we have one more Soul Sister, and that is Gala Greeters. This card gains us 2 life whenever another creature touches the battlefield, or we can make a tapped treasure token or put a 1/1 counter on Gala Greeters. So, all in all, that is 10 ways to gain tons and tons of life, but we still need to be able to win a game of Magic, and gaining life does not actually facilitate that. So, to make that happen, let's go ahead and make sure we have some life gain payoffs. These are going to be Epicure of Blood, Marauding Blight Priest, Dina Soul Steeper, and Cliffhaven Vampire. All of these have the same effect. Anytime we gain life, each opponent will lose 1 life. This works perfectly well with how Soul Sisters function, because this means we will be gaining life in increments of 1 with the Soul Sisters, and then burning our opponents in increments of 1 as well. There are some board states you can create with this where you end up dealing like 8 damage to people every time you get a creature out. It's kind of insane. Dina Soul Steeper has the added benefit of being able to sack creatures as well, which will be important since our commander needs creatures in the graveyard to function at all. Then we have Viscapa Guildmage, which says that we can cause all of our life gain in a turn to be converted into life loss for our opponents. Typically, you only want to pay into this ability once in this deck so that you have the ability to do other effects, but if you have nothing in your hand and you want to use this as a mana sink, there's a lot of damage that can come out of this if you are stacking up the effect. Maybe we'll be able to see me doing that in the actual gameplay section. It depends on what cards we'll draw as we play. Now, because our commander cares so much about our own life loss, we need some ways to pay life into effects. Otherwise, we will not get our commander's ability. So, one of the best cards to use in our deck is going to be the Skursdag Supplicant. This card allows us to pay a mana and tap her to discard a single card. When we do, every player will lose a life. The reason this works so well in this deck is we always need creatures in the grave for our commander to revive, and this will give us 2 life that we will lose, which will also benefit our commander. And because it's burning our opponents as well as us, it's not just all downside. It is helping us trickle in more damage for our Soul Sister build to do. It's also a creature, which Soul Sister decks really need a high amount of. We're also going to run a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, one of the strongest reanimation targets we possibly could be running in this deck. He will gain us life equal to the devotion we have to black, and then force our opponents to lose life equal to that as well. Or rather, that's not really how he's worded. He's a little more busted than that. He comes onto the battlefield, making our opponents lose life equal to our devotion to black, and then we gain life equal to the life they all lost combined. This means if we have a devotion to black of just 3, our commander and Gary, we gain 9 life. At the end of the turn, that means we'll be able to distribute 9/1/1 counters onto Gary and have the silliest combat step anybody has ever had in a subsequent turn when it comes to using Gary at all. That said, we also need to supplement what our commander is doing with more revival. So we're going to have 5 other ways to recur creatures, and we're going to make sure that almost all of these either sacrifice creatures or are creatures in their own right, so that our commander can revive them at any given time. So, Victimize can sack creatures to revive 2 creatures, Priest of Fell Rites can sack himself to revive a creature, as can Doomed Necromancer, and Redemption Choir and Sun Titan can both revive creatures, or really anything in our grave that is a permanent with mana value 3 or less, as long as these touch the battlefield. For Redemption Choir, he needs you to have a specific set of attacks as well, but that's really easy to hit. Our commander and Redemption Choir may have the same amount of attack, but a lot of our Soul Sisters have different attack values, so we can hit that Coven ability pretty easily. Finally, we need to make sure we are making sure that our Soul Sisters can get as much life gain as possible, and what better way than to have a small token production engine in this deck. And because we need our commander to be able to revive creatures at a good rate, let's make sure that all of the token production we're running can also cause us life loss. This does mean we are very, very restricted in what kind of token production we can use, but I think that it is well worth that restriction for what we get to come up with here. First of all, we get the Trading Post. This has a myriad of effects, letting us discard cards to gain life, all stuff that our commander likes, letting us pay life to make a goat token, letting us sack creatures to return artifacts from our graveyard to our hand, and letting us sack artifacts to draw cards. Our deck only has 4 artifacts, but we will be using those 2 first abilities quite often. Then we have Dreadhorde Invasion, which will give us a 1/1 zombie token at the cost of 1 life at the beginning of our turn. Please make sure to sacrifice the zombie token every time you summon it, otherwise you will not gain subsequent Soul Sister triggers. Then you have Glasscast Heart. This card allows you to pay 1 life to create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink. And of course, because it's a token, we can just slam it at our opponent over and over again, gaining extra life, and if they block it, who cares? We lost a token, and then we revive a better creature out of our graveyard with our commander. And that does it for the core of our deck. Lose life to get resources back, gain life to pump creatures, and sometimes pumping creatures actually matters. It doesn't really matter a lot in our specific deck, but, you know, it could if you decided to build the deck a little differently. So, how are we going to make sure that we are digging through this deck to get all of our important cards? Well, we have a very beefy draw section to talk about. We are going to be running a 14-card draw section in this deck to guarantee that we hit all of our important game pieces. Also, so many of these cards are pulling double duty as life losers for us as well that their inclusion is just kind of a no-brainer. So let's go into each of these. We have Darkstar Augur and Dark Tutelage. These both have the same effect. At the beginning of our upkeep, we can reveal the top card of our library and then put that card into our hand. We then lose life equal to that card's mana value, meaning we will almost always be able to get a bunch of life loss for our commander to see. Then we have Blood Tracker, which we can use to pay 2 life as many times as we have 1 mana, and then we get 1/1 counters on him in response to that. Then if he ever dies, we get to turn all those 1/1 counters into card draw. This card also doubles as a great place to store counters from our commander to draw an even more absurd amount of cards. And we have a more reliable version of his effect in Greed that just lets us pay 1 mana and pay 2 life in order to draw a card. We have some one-off effects too in Read the Bones, Funeral Rites, and Dire Sight. All of these allow us to draw 2 cards and then lose 2 life, and they have various extra effects as well. Read the Bones lets us scry, Dire Sight lets us surveil, and Funeral Rites lets us mill. Speaking of one-off effects, let's make sure that we are making good use of our creatures. We need them to hit the graveyard, so let's go ahead and have ways to sacrifice them. Corrupted Conviction and Village Rites and Eviscerator Insight can all be used to sack creatures in order to draw multiple cards, and Eviscerator's Insight can be cast from the graveyard, which is doubly fun for us. Finally, let's have some recurring draw power in our deck. Underworld Connections is a budget Phyrexian arena, allowing us to have a land tap to pay a life and draw a card. Argual's Bloodfest is a budget Greed, letting us pay 2 mana and 2 life to draw a card. Lunar Conviction has the same ability, but also can spawn bat tokens. And Erebos Bloodhearted has a sack outlet on him and the ability to let us pay 2 life and draw a card anytime one of our creatures dies. He's the sack outlet, and he is also the sacrifice payoff. He also just has Indestructible, which is fantastic in case you happen to get board wiped. And that does it for all of our draw power. That should be enough to dig through our deck at a very rapid pace and lose all the life we possibly could need for our deck to function. That said, let's go ahead and talk about removing our opponent's pieces from the game, because I have a surprise for you in this section. Once again, we want all of our removal to synergize very well with what our commander is doing. So let's go through the generic pieces first and then move into the other more esoteric pieces. We've got Binding the Old Gods to blow up anything and then ramp later in the game. Drag the Roots, which is a budget Assassin's Trophy. As long as we have Delirium, this card costs 2 less. And Mortality Sphere, which blows up any non-land permanent and costs 2 less if we've gained life in a turn. Then we have Rankle, Master of Pranks, which has a draw ability attached to him, the ability to make everybody sack a creature, and the ability to make everybody discard a card. This card's fantastic because anytime it swings, we can make sure that we are losing life for our commander to see. Also, any life gain that we have in our deck, throwing all of that power onto Rankle is not a bad move, all things considered. We're also going to run Vona, Butcher of Magdon, another fantastic card to hold all of the 1/1 counters from Betor, and he can tap himself to destroy a non-land permanent, and we can only do that during our turn. This means we'll be able to revive practically everything in our graveyard if we want, but most importantly, because he's got Vigilance and Lifelink, we can store a ton of 1/1 counters on him, swing him at an opponent, gain a metric fuck ton of life, and then double the 1/1 counters on him, basically, every time we do. This card's synergies with our commander are fantastic. Then we have the fun surprise, some of my favorite cards in Magic, the Fleshbag Marauder type cards. Cards that say when they enter the battlefield, every player has to sack a creature along with us. These cards serve such a good purpose in our deck because we want creatures dying all the time. These are creatures that enter the battlefield, so they trigger our Soul Sisters. Then our commander will be able to revive them. They just do everything we want us to be doing with our creatures. We have Fleshbag Marauder, Plague Crafter, Accursed Marauder, and Demon's Disciple. All of them have variations of the Fleshbag Marauder effect, but realistically, they are all just Fleshbag Marauder with different lines of text. You don't need me to tell you what each of these cards do. You can pause on them. They all make people sack creatures with us. Always sacrifice your Fleshbag Marauder types when you do. Finally, we're going to run a single board wipe in Austere Command. I'd like to run more, but we just don't have that kind of room. If you are upgrading this deck, I would add in an Undo Inversion on top of the Austere Command, and that would give you 2 board wipes, which is a fine amount in most casual decks. Anyway, Austere Command lets us blow up all artifacts, enchantments, or creatures with mana value 3 or less, or creatures with mana value 4 or greater. This versatility means we can get rid of all kinds of things that we simply do not want to see. Sometimes we can just use this as a bane of progress that blows up all artifacts and enchantments while we, the creature deck, sit back and laugh because we have so much life, we don't care that our opponents have boards filled with dragons or whatever they happen to have. Anyway, that does it for all of our removal. Now we need to talk about the next most important part of our deck. We need to have enough mana to play the game. And much like with every other section here, our mana is gonna have to serve double duty and make sure that we are losing life and sacking creatures. So we're going to try to make sure that most of our ramp is creature-based in one way, shape, form, or another, and if those creatures can give us more abilities that our commander cares about, that's even better. So let's begin with the first one, Blight Soil Druid. This is a mana dork that lets us pay 1 life to add green to our mana pool. Basically perfect for what we're trying to do. That's a creature for our Soul Sisters, mana for ramping, and life lost for our commander. Then we have Treasure Dredger, which lets us pay life to create treasure tokens. This effectively lets us stockpile any mana, and if we need that treasure token to be used immediately, this works as a mana filter for us. Then we have Elvish Rejuvenator, which allows us to look at the top 5 of our deck, throw a land down, and then be happy at that. Then we have Farhaven Elf, which lets us grab any basic land out of our deck, put it on the battlefield tapped. Then we have Wood Elves, grabs a forest out of our deck, including dual lands, and puts it on the battlefield untapped. Then we have Sad Robot, comes into the battlefield, grabs a basic land, puts it on the battlefield tapped, and then Solemn Simulacrum can be sacrificed to draw us a card. And speaking of sacrifice, we have other creatures that want to kill themselves, not because of their rent, or because of the mortgage, or because of what's going on outside in America, but because they need to give us ramp. We have Steve, the Sakura Tribe Elder Value Engine. He can sack himself in order to get a basic land out of our deck, and Dawntrunner Elk can do the same thing. Then we have Search for Tomorrow. This is just your generically good grab a basic land out of your deck, play it on turn 1 if you have it type of card. Finally, we have the Cryptolith Fragment, a mana rock that enters the battlefield tapped, but allows us to pay 1 life in order to add a mana of any color. I think this card does a wonderful job in this deck because it is just doing everything that we need it to do. Finally, well, that's really it for everything that we're doing with the deck. All that's left now is the lands, but we are not done talking about life loss. You see, Not only do we have our usual caveat of lands, we have 6 swamps, 8 forests, and 5 plains, and we have a few dual lands as well: Sungrass Prairie, Fortified Village, Tainted Wood, Tainted Field, Shine Shadow Snarl, Haunted Mire because it is searchable, Canopy Vista, and Viridescent Bog. But we have some fun utility lands as well. They are Hashep Oasis, Ifnir Dreadlands, and Sheffet Dunes. All of these lands make us pay life to gain mana if we need their colors, which is exactly what we need these lands to be able to do. Any card we have access to that allows us to pay life for an incremental effect works really well in Betor. We also have Mosswort Bridge to get free casts from the top of our deck, and Pit of Offerings to get rid of problematic cards in graveyards. Then we have our Omni lands of Exotic Orchard, Command Tower, and Murmuring Bosk, which also has the ability to be a pain land if we need it to be. Finally, we have the fetching lands of Terramorphic Expanse, Evolving Wilds, Deceptive Landscape, Myriad Landscape, and Corrosion Verge. The Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds are basic. The Deceptive Landscape can cycle if we need it to, and it's just the best version of this kind of land that's ever been printed outside of real fetch lands. And, you know, Corrosion Verge and Myriad Landscape, they are just great lands that can ramp us. Normally, I wouldn't run Myriad Landscape in a 3-color deck, but this deck really benefits from playing 3 to 4 spells a turn. It's why we have such a strong draw engine. It's why we want as much mana as humanly possible. And it's why our commander is going to be able to replay things like Sakura Tribe Elder, so that we can ramp up to big amounts of mana to play lots of spells in a single turn. And that does it for our deck. This was probably one of the most frustrating decks for me to ever put together, and you can tell, if you look at the considering section for this deck, you can tell how many cards left this thing during the building process. Holy shit. There's so many failed ideas trying to get this thing online. But now we have to talk about how to actually play the deck, so let's get right to that. Alrighty, now let's talk about keepable hands. I'd like this hand to have some ramp, but we don't have any access to ramp right now, but it does have Hashtep Oasis and Glasscast Heart, which are both really good for us, and the Skurskag supplement is also fantastic for us. So let's go ahead and try with what we have here. Let's draw our first turn. It's a Deceptive Landscape, and let's go ahead and crack that, and let's get a forest. No, we need a plains out of our library. Let's get that on the battlefield tapped, and then go to the next turn. There's a Vizscapa Guildmage. Let's go ahead and pay 2. Let's get him online, and then go to turn 3, where we get to play the Hashtep Oasis and tap 1, 2, 3, and get Glasscast Heart out on the battlefield. This will be able to make a 1/1 vampire creature later in the game. Moving on to the next turn, we have a Blood Tracker. This is a 2/2. I'm gonna be honest. I think the move here, yeah, we're gonna play Plains, and we're gonna tap 3, and we're gonna play the Blood Tracker, and we're gonna sit on that. This is a vampire, so our Glasscast Heart will see it. So let's move to the next turn and see what we get. We have a Dreadhorde Invasion. Okay. We're going to play a Plains. We are going to pay 1. And we are going to lose a life. And we are going to add this bat token that this makes. Is it a bat or is it a vampire? It's a vampire token. So we are going to make that vampire token instead. This is dead. This is not a thing we have. This means when we pay 1, 2, 3, 4, Redemption Choir will see that we do in fact have 3 different types of attack power on the board. So it will grab this Deceptive Landscape out of the grave, and then we can crack the Deceptive Landscape and go into our library and grab ourselves a Swamp. Put that on the battlefield tapped and pass to our opponents. Moving into the next turn, we draw a Binding the Old Gods. Now, I'd like this card to be used right now, but we're not in a position where we can. It doesn't do much for us at this moment. We're missing a land drop, and we don't have a creature in our grave. So I think the move is Sun Titan, getting back Deceptive Landscape, cracking Deceptive Landscape, getting a Swamp out, and then swinging with the Redemption Choir, and maybe the Vampire, to revive the Deceptive Landscape and crack the Deceptive Landscape to get a forest. Now, it's very unlikely our opponents don't block him, so he's just going to go to the graveyard when we do this, but we did get to ramp a lot when we did, so I'm pretty okay with that set of events. Now, let's go to the next turn. We have a Corrupted Conviction. We can use this to sack creatures. This is fine. Let's pay 1, 2, 3. Let's get Skirskag Supplicant out on the board. This will be used to revive things a little later. And, man, I'd really like to do Binding the Old Gods and Dreadhorde Invasion. That would be super ideal, but I can't really make that happen with this setup. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to Bind the Old Gods, one of our opponent's cards. And then we're going to enter combat and swing with our Sun Titan. That's going to revive our Deceptive Landscape, which we will crack to go into our library and grab another Plains in anticipation of us getting more Soul Sister cards out. Let's see here. He's untapped. He doesn't actually tap. We passed our opponents, and I think we Corrupted Conviction, the Vampire token, to draw a couple extra cards. Elvish Rejuvenator is in our hands. Okay, I'm okay with the Elvish Rejuvenator being here, actually. This will work out really well with the next turn. So let's move on to the next turn. We are at turn 8. I think this is where we get Betor out. Binding the Old Gods is going to go into our deck, and it's going to grab a Murmuring Bosk because it is a forest. So that comes out. Boom. Now, we are going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to play our commander. We used Hashtag Oasis, so we're going to lose a life for that. We are then going to pay... We're going to do this differently. We are going to pay 2 more life, discard this Elvish Rejuvenator in order to set our opponents back a little bit, and then we have enough life to use Eviscerator's Insight. So, we are going to enter combat. Sun Titan is going to swing. That is going to revive up our Deceptive Landscape, which we will crack in order to go into our library and grab ourselves another swamp. And then as we end our turn, Betor is going to add counters. 1, 2, 3. We didn't gain any life, so there's no counters being added yet. But Betor is going to revive the Elvish Rejuvenator from our grave, which is going to let us look at the top 5 cards of our deck and put a land out. We do not have a land of the top 5 cards of our deck because we have grabbed so many lands out of our deck already. That's fine. On our opponent's turn, we'll use Eviscerator's Insight, and we're going to go ahead and sacrifice him in order to draw 2 cards. Hey, there's our land right there. Unfortunate that it came at this time. Anyway, let's move on to the next turn, and we have Ifnir Deadlands. Let's play that. This will give us access to more revives. All right. Binding the Old Gods is gone. And I think it's time to start getting some life gain. Man, we haven't found any life gain yet, though. 10 cards that give us life gain, and we haven't seen any of them. That's so weird. All right. We already played our land. We get 2 life lost by using it. Let's go ahead and pay 2. Here's Steve. Boop. Let's go ahead and sack him. Go into our library. Get a Plains out. Get that set up and ready. Then we are going to... Man, do I just burn? I can do this to lose a life and this to lose a life. That's 2 life loss. Meaning I've lost 3 life so far. And we are going to... Actually, no, we don't have to do that. I don't have to discard cards. I don't have to do that. I'm not in a position where I need to do that. I can pay 2, and I can just add 2 1/1 counters to the Blood Tracker. Now I've lost 5 life. So when we go into our next move, we are going to pay 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Actually, we're only going to lose... Do I want to do it? So I've lost... Okay, cool. I've lost 5 life, and that is where I want to be for what I'm doing. we're going to set it to where Viscapa Guildmage says if we lose, or we're getting 2 instances of the Guildmage's ability. That's what we're doing. So we're going to swing with Betor and Sun Titan. Sun Titan will reanimate our Sakura Tribe Elder, which of course we will be sacrificing in just a second. Let's go ahead and get that part out of the way. He sacked himself. We're gaining 3 life with Betor, and our opponents are losing 6 life because of the Viscapa Guildmage. Then, because we've lost a ton of life, we get to go into our graveyard and reanimate a creature mana value 5 or less. So it's going to be the Redemption Choir we reanimate, and the Redemption Choir will reanimate a Steve as well. Because Steve was reanimated once more, let's go ahead and sack him to go into our library and get another Swamp. We have lots of mana. We get to do lots of game actions, basically. Let's go ahead and use the Glass Casket Heart as well to go ahead and make ourselves a vampire. I think we would just win next turn. And here's how we would win next turn. It's really stupid. It's honestly quite stupid the way that we win. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 4, 4, 5, 5. 5 instances of Viscapa Guildmage. When we gain life this turn, every opponent will lose that much life. So, where are we gaining life from? Well, Redemption Choir and our commander and our vampire we made hit for 7 total damage. It doesn't matter where that damage goes. Now that is 7 damage multiplied by the 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was it 5? 2, 3, 4, yeah, 5. 5 instances of Viscapa Guildmage's effect. This will do 35 damage to the entire table while gaining us some life. And Sun Titan would be swinging as well. That means we're getting Sakura Tribe Elder and the Elvish Rejuvenator out, means we're getting more lands. None of that truly matters. What matters is we have dealt 105 damage to the entire table with this setup, and we didn't get our other Soul Sisters. I'm upset. We could have been doing so much by getting a couple of our Soul Sisters and life gain payoffers out. We had to struggle bust through this, playing like we were a ramping deck, playing like we were a landfall deck instead. At least we have enough mana to pay for damn near anything that we possibly could want. I mean, the Elvish Rejuvenator is going to look at the top 5, and it's desperately going to try to find a land. It did, somehow. And then, of course, Steve would grab us another land, and we just keep on going. We just keep on trucking along. It feels bad saying that turn 10 is when this did this, but this felt like a really bad set of draws. Oh, well. Deck still did a thing, and I'm actually happy with how it felt to Goldfish, honestly. But we can make this more efficient. We certainly can. So let's talk about what we would do to make this deck a little more efficient. All right, this deck needs a lot of work. Even in the budget form, it feels fine to play, and it feels nice and resilient, but I feel like we can definitely make it more efficient. So, let's put a Phyrexian Arena in here to draw some more cards. Knight's Whisper is a better alternative to things like Read the Bones. For what our deck is trying to do specifically, it lowers the mana cost a bit. Skrell's Hive will make tokens and also make us lose life. That's fantastic for us. Elves of Deep Shadow is a much better alternative to our current mana dorks. And let's go ahead and add an Anguished Unmaking in here. It's one of the best ways to get rid of any problematic card on the board, and it loses us life. For the life gain side of things, let's add an Exemplar of Light so that we can gain life and turn that into draw power. And then let's add in Soul's Attendant and Essence Warden and Soul Warden to gain lots of life way faster and way more efficiently. This deck desperately wants more life gain. Let's also add in the Gaffer so that that life gain is transformed properly into draw power. Then let's make sure that things like the Viscapa Guildmage don't make it into the final version of the deck, not because they're bad cards, but because, dear lord, sinking that much mana really, really hurt. If we didn't have Sakura Tribe Elder, we would not have managed to get the lethal damage out in that game. So Let's instead run Enduring Tenacity and Veto Thorn of the Duskrose. These also have the added benefit of being creatures like the Biscop Guildmage. Keep all of the other creatures in the deck. They're all fine to use, but Veto and Enduring Tenacity will be a much smoother way to get to that game-ending amount of life gain, life loss. Speaking of life loss, let's also add in the True Blue Dark Confidant so that we have more life loss coming our way. And let's put in a Ripples of Undeath to make sure we can get more things in the graveyard for our Commander to see. Finally, at the top end, let's add a Beledros Witherbloom. The 1/1 tokens Beledros makes are fantastic for the Soul Sister strategy that we are going for, and an Eerie Ultimatum is a great top end to all of this. We are a graveyard deck. Let's play like we're a graveyard deck, and let's put in a card that reanimates our whole graveyard to make our opponents die in one fell swoop. Whew. There. That does it for everything about this deck. I have had very few decks go through this much just strife to get them online, but I do think Betor will be worth it in your hands if you give him the chance. That all said, let's go ahead and start wrapping things up. And if you like the deck, let me know in the comment section below. That said, I am live almost every Monday through Thursday playing games, talking about Magic, and talking about stuff that's important to me. I also have a main channel you can go subscribe to. And if you want to support me financially, I have a fourth wall with a playmat, and there's my Patreon as well, where you can go support me directly. Finally, if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please consider doing so, and please check me out over on Blue Sky, where I let you know when I'm going live and any other updates that are happening to me or the channel or anything else. Whew. That all said, thank you for watching, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.